I want to discuss about the latest election results in Lanka because this is the first time since a long time, nearly 4 decades, that it has thrown up a mixed result. Dissanayake, who has been elected as the president of Sri Lanka, is the first president who has secured less than 50% votes and has been elected as president. Never in the history of Lanka's presidency that a person with less than 50% votes has got a chance to become the president of the country. And this is all the first election when SLFP, that is the Sri Lankan Freedom Party, or the UNP, United National Party, both of them have not been in the top 2 winner or losers list. They have finished in a 3rd and 4th position. And this election has also been a clear indication of the standing of Rajapaksa family. And it has also showed another distinct tilt towards the way in which the results have come about. And it is a groundbreaking and rather to say watershed movement for Sri Lankan electoral history, because a party which has its rudiment to revolutionary ideology, which has not got a substantial number of seats in either parliament or in presidential elections, has got a candidate elected to the post of the president for the first time in the form of Anura Kumara Dissanayake. I must tell you this, we must rather go into the history of the JVP. The party has its beginnings from late 60s and 1971, when it started as a revolutionary organization with left-oriented ideology. It had involved itself in an insurrection against the then government of Bandaranayake. The insurrection happened from southern parts of Lanka, the same parts that the present Anura Kumara Dissanayake has won. And this resurrection, which started as some kind of a disturbance, ended up becoming an insurgency problem, threatening the very existence of the Sri Lankan government. At that point of time, the Indian government had to intervene in support of Bandaranayake to restore law and order in the Sri Lanka and to curtail JVP activities. But JVP as a movement always advocated for a revolutionary form of struggle, which in terms has to be understood as armed struggle. That is, through force they wanted to overthrow the government. And the second time when they tried it, its supreme leader Rohan Vijayveera was captured by Sri Lankan security agencies and he was arrested. During his interrogation or his stay in the prison, he died under mysterious circumstances. It is considered to be police was involved in killing of Rohan Vijayveera, and this was a death knell to JVP movement at that point of time. After that, JVP as a movement was banned and its activities were curtailed by parties in power. The parties in power, though it changed between SLFP, Sri Lankan Freedom Party, and that of United National Party, they had one thing in common: they did not allow JVP to become larger than life entity, and they were always using their state power to curtail the activities of JVP. And lest we forget, JVP is also indirectly or directly responsible for the pogroms committed against Tamil population in Colombo. They indeed were Sinhala chauvinist movement. So compared to that of UNP, that is United National Party, under whose regime the first disturbance between the Tamils and that of the Sinhala started in 1982-83 period, and that of SLFP when it reached the peak during Chandrika Kumaratunga and subsequently Mahinda Rajapaksa period, it is JVP which was the forerunner or torchbearer of this kind of pogroms against the Tamils. Now the same party's leader has been elected as the Sri Lankan president. So we must watch out for his policies towards the Tamil people. I think the role of opposition parties in Lanka has to be studied by virtue of the results which have come about in the recent elections. The winning candidate has secured approximately 42.3% votes, whereas the losing candidate Sajith Premadasa of SJB has secured around 32.5% votes. So there is a distinct 10% vote difference between the winner and the loser. And the person who has come third was the former president Ranil Wickremesinghe, who had secured 17% votes. And person who came fourth was Nimal Rajapakse, who till 2022 was a minister and whose paternal uncle Gotabaya Rajapakse was the president and whose father was the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, that is Mahinda Rajapakse. So that particular family which contested the election under the banner of Podujana Perumana had secured only 2.58% of votes, and UNP under Ranil had secured only 17% or 17.5% votes. So this clearly shows the main parties or the main contenders have not gone beyond 20%, and the contenders who are outside the SLFP fold and UNP fold were able to secure approximately 75% of the votes. This shows a clear trend at the voting patterns in Lanka. And another important trend that I must tell to the audience that has a significant impact, that would have a significant impact on Lankan political dynamics in the coming days, would be the number of votes that Sajith Premadesa has received in the north and northeastern regions. As a matter of fact, these regions have a large and significant population of Tamils and that of Muslims. And the population by virtue of percentage in Sri Lanka, the demographics I am speaking about is 75% Sinhala, 11% Sri Lankan Tamils, 4.5% Indian origin Tamils, and approximately 9.3% Sri Lankan Muslims, which includes both Tamil speaking Muslims and that of Sinhala Muslims. So once we calculate all these things, it comes around 100%, and out of this nearly the 25% of the areas fall in the north and northeastern regions and to an extent to that of the western region. In the SJP, which is that of Sajith Premadasa, has virtually swept the north and northeastern region, and in fact the voting percentage of Sajith Premadasa outnumbers the voting percentage of Tamil National Alliance, which was able to secure only 1.78% of the total votes polled for the presidential candidate. This clearly shows the four-way split in the opposition had indeed helped the Jana Vimukti Perumana to gain a distinct advantage over the opposition. But there is something that we must look ahead in days to come, because there is every chance the President Dissanayake might dissolve the parliament and seek a fresh mandate, allowing his own party to garner more number of seats in the Sri Lankan parliament. How many seats that his party could win will ultimately decide its majority or its ability to form a government in the parliament or to have a prime ministerial candidate. In this respect, Dissanayake has won only 2 or 3 areas, central, to an extent west, and that of south. Other than that, in the other areas of north, east, and that of northern areas, he has been decimated virtually. So considering all these conditions, Dissanayake, even though he has won the presidential election, we must keep watching for the parliamentary elections, and the performance of opposition parties in parliamentary elections will ultimately determine the political future of the JVP government and that of the opposition parties. As I said earlier, Dissanayake government has twin challenges. The first challenge is to keep the army in good humor, because Sri Lanka is one such country which has a comparatively large army for a small population. Approximately the Sri Lankan army strength is around 3.2 to 3.5 lakhs. That is, they have almost 14 army personnel for every 1,000 people, which is disproportionately high as per the world standards. And the Sri Lankan defense expenditure is around 410 billion rupees. And Sri Lanka, during all its time in civil war period, had spent nearly $200 billion. And most of the Sri Lankan exports imports when it comes to arm purchases come from countries like China, India, Pakistan, Israel, etc., etc. So it is heavily import dependent defense establishment that operates in Sri Lanka. So how come Dissanayake is going to reduce the role of army, reduce defense expenditure, will ultimately decide how Dissanayake is going to spend on other vital areas like agriculture, education, tourism, etc. So considering all this, how army will take Disanayake's stance, considering the relationship that Dissanayake has had with the army since 1971, we must see it is some kind of an uneasy relationship could evolve between Dissanayake and that of army, which may lead to a large scale political turmoil in Sri Lanka in times to come. I predict in 1 or 2 years, Sri Lanka may have some kind of a political disturbance, even leading to a military coup, which is a clear and distinct possibility because of JVP's own political stance and its economic and that of other measures that it will be trying to take in the times to come. I think the basic constraint for JVP government is the Sri Lankan economy. They are dependent on World Bank loans. Their economic is in doldrums. They need to reduce the defense expenditure. They need to reduce the army. As I said earlier, this they can ill afford to do so. If they try to do it, there will be political instability, which will be indirectly supported by SLFP and UNP, who want JVP to be dislodged from power. So it is a tightrope walk for Jana Vimukti Perumana and its president Dissanayake. And as a matter of fact, he needs to appease the Buddhist sentiments also, because the Sri Lankan army per se is considered to be an extended arm of Sinhala Buddhist culture. So trying to dilute or trying to downsize the army is trying to question the very edifice of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. The Buddhist power center in the form of Buddhist pontiffs and that of Buddhist lobby will never allowed to happen. So it is going to be a tough period ahead as far as I am concerned, and the constraint may come from 3 fronts, as I said. One, the Buddhist religious front. Second, from the army. Third, from the basic economic reforms, which would be steadfastly opposed by many parties, which will want the JVP government to be brought down by hook or crook. I think I had answered this question, but still I prefer to answer this question with little bit of detail. The JVP government's tenure or stability is completely dependent on, as I said earlier, its ability to work with army and its ability to build relationship with that of the Muslim population in Sri Lanka, its ability to build a strong, workable solution to that of Tamil population. Whether they are able to accommodate Tamils in that of the cabinet is something we must watch out for, simply because whether it is Rajapakse or Ranil Wickramasinghe, even though they were at loggerheads, even though Rajapakse was at loggerheads with the Tamils and he was the one who had destroyed the LTTE, causing a major genocide, he still did have some Tamil ministers inside his cabinet. So that means that he had co-opted with a section of Tamil population in the Lankan government. But whereas the JVP, what is the stance it is going to take when it comes to Tamils in Lanka will ultimately decide which direction this government is going to head to, because they are compelled to have some kind of a good understanding with Muslims, with that of Tamils, and that of pacifying the Buddhist sentiments, with that of army, also manage economy, and finally less said about with that of even the opposition parties, which are the prime parties who would be taking advantage of even a small disturbance created by JVP's policy for their own interest. For example, if the JVP takes a stance of not having a Tamil in the cabinet, definitely I feel the SLFP, or for that matter UNP, would create a problem, political problem inside the Lanka, and UNP candidate or UNP split away candidate, who happens to be Sajid Premadasa, has got a considerable chunk of vote in Tamil dominated areas. So it is going to be a hard road ahead for the JVP to travel and sustain in power.
What will be the role of China?
Yeah, China would be, I think they would be the first people who would be happy seeing a JVP coming back to power. More than China, the Indian communists will feel delighted, happy, and they would be jumping over the moon that they have seen a communist government coming to power. But the stability of communist government also is dependent on many other factors. How would US view the present Dissanayake government? How would World Bank view Dissanayake government? How would the Modi government view Dissanayake government? Because China, if it needs to operate in Sri Lanka, it has to operate from in an extended area. That is, it is a strategic overreach that China has to do when it needs to operate in Sri Lanka. In the coziest of times with Mahinda Rajapaksa government, China could achieve very little. But now Sri Lanka is in economic doldrums, and Dissanayake himself does not enjoy a considerable majority or considerable popularity throughout Lanka. So his own position, I think, is little bit precarious. At this juncture, China would definitely keep his cards close to its chest, and it would try to slowly, steadily gauge the political situation in Lanka before totally opening up or before totally building bridges with JVP, even though internally they may feel happy about JVP coming to power. Major bone of contention between Sri Lanka and India have always been that of the relationship that India shares with its Tamil brethren in Lanka. Since JVP has come to power without much of the Tamil backing, how would JVP react to that of the Tamil population in general will have an impact on India-Sri Lankan relations. This is my first assessment. When it comes to second assessment, India has huge investments in Sri Lanka, both in terms of government investments and also in terms of Indian business entities investing in large measure in Sri Lanka. One few such business entities are Adani, which has been targeted by Dissanayake during his electoral campaign. How Dissanayake would react after coming to power towards Indian interest, especially business interest, will determine India's relationship with Sri Lanka, apart from that of the Dissanayake government's actions and intent towards Tamil populace in Lanka. Another important factor would be what would Dissanayake government's role in appeasing, or rather to say providing some kind of a foothold for radical Islamist elements in Lanka. Why I say so? Because in his Thanksgiving speech or Thanksgiving message, Dissanayake had put a clear-cut indication by stating that I would rather thank the Sinhala, Tamil and Muslim population of Sri Lanka. Thus, he had identified Muslims as a separate entity, whereas in Sinhalas there are Buddhists, Christians and Muslims. In Tamils there are Hindus, Christians and Muslims. But instead of making a Tamil Muslim and Sinhala Muslim as a separate entity, he had combined the Muslims as single entity while making the Christians as Sinhala and the tough Christians as Tamil and Buddhist as Sinhala and Hindus as Tamil. What he means to say is that Tamil stands only for Hindus and Christians and Sinhala stands only for Buddhists and Christians, whereas it doesn't stand for Muslims. So Muslims, whether irrespective of language, are one distinct entity. So his ideological understanding of Islamic activities in Lanka is something that we must keep a close watch of. If Dissanayake is going to pamper the radical elements in Lanka, if he is going to have a kid glove treatment towards the radical elements in Lanka, it would have definite security ramifications over India, especially in the states of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So automatically Indian government may react in equal measure that is counterproductive to Disanayake's interest. So I think one thing that I am closely watching for is which country Dissanayake is going to select for his official visit abroad. Whether is it going to be China or India. That will definitely give a clear indicator about what Dissanayake is trying to do in order to build a sound relationship with India. The rise of left in our neighborhood is something that is nothing new for India per se, because we have seen the rise of left in India's neighborhood in Nepal. The implications that have taken that it has had for India is something that is quite problematic, as well as it has not been a peaceful coexistence that we might expect from a country which has a long border with that of India. So the rise of left in our neighborhood is something that would definitely not satisfactory solution or a satisfactory result that the Indian government might have expected out of Sri Lankan elections. So as far as I am concerned, as an Indian or a person who is interested in security affairs and strategic policy and that of international affairs, JVP per se has no administrative ability. It is a party which has a long standing reputation for agitational politics. Having such a party come to power in Sri Lanka and its clear and open stance on several issues which I had stated above, certain issues are directly countering India's interest, that is within Sri Lanka and extended up to that of India's territorial waters. So how it is going to impact India-Sri Lanka relations is something that I am closely watching for, because I don't expect Dissanayake would try to trouble much, because he knows it was India which negotiated for a World Bank loan for Sri Lanka. He knows that any act of his which may go beyond a certain point will definitely result in destabilization of his government, because there have been instances when India directly or indirectly has in its own way played a role in change of governments in our neighborhood. The best example is how Maizu has been set right. In spite of all his utterances and his pro-China stance, he has been brought to his knees. I am talking about the Maldivian president. The same could be said about the erstwhile president of Sri Lanka, Mahinda Rajapakse, when he had taken a stand openly against India's security interest and allowed to have China to have a larger say by providing them the base. We had our own role, or I don't want to comment upon what role we played or what extent to which we played, but we did have a role in bringing down Rajapakse's government in 2015. So if he tries to play or overdo things against India's strategic interest, definitely Dissanayake is in for a huge trouble. None of the left parties in India will be able to protect Dissanayake when such situation arises. Not even China can protect him. This is my personal assessment. So I think we must watch out for Dissanayake for another 6 months to have a clear-cut understanding, and we must also have a close watch at the parliamentary elections in Sri Lanka, which is going to happen very soon. Thank you.